Today, we're going to be talking about all things inner Earth. Now, I know there are a bunch of videos out there on this topic, but I do feel like none of them really cover the whole subject. Most of them either look at it from a hollow Earth angle or they only scratch the surface of what's really going on. Here's the thing about hollow Earth though. It's always talked about like the Earth is definitely a globe with a hollow center. But a lot of people find that hard to swallow, so they end up dismissing the whole idea as just some crazy fantasy. But even if the Earth isn't shaped how we think it is, there could still be huge underground spaces where people or other beings are living. Usually when talking about Hollow Earth, it's always about this hidden civilization called Agartha living in the center. But if we shift our focus to inner Earth instead, we're not stuck on any one model of what we're living on. It's more about the idea that there could be hidden civilizations beneath our feet, no matter what shape the Earth is. Think about it. We've only drilled about 7 miles down into the Earth. Now in this video, I'm not going to prescribe to any specific model. I just wanted to preface with that no one really knows how far you can go down, which means there's a lot of mystery when it comes to what's beneath our feet. Is there a secret government controlling the surface from below? Are there different races of human beings like tree people? Perhaps there's something to all these myths and accounts of advanced civilizations beneath the surface. With that, let's keep an open mind and dive right in. The idea that there's a deep state is often labeled as a conspiracy theory, but there are many things to consider when it comes to the idea of underground government. With myths and legends, it starts to make the idea of an underground civilization seem just like a made-up story. But today, right now in real life, there not only exists the technology to create vast underground bunkers and tunnels, but there are in fact several deep underground military bases, also known as domes, around the world. And supposedly, many of these underground bases are connected by high-speed underground maglev trains that allow long-distance travel in very short periods of time. Let's dive into some of these known domes. First, there's the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado. And this isn't really a secret or anything. It's an acknowledged military installation built into the granite heart of Cheyenne Mountain. Originally designed to withstand a nuclear blast, this place is like a small underground city. It's got its own power plant, water supply, and can house over 1,000 people. It's so massive that it has 15 three-story buildings, all mounted on giant springs to absorb the shock of a potential nuclear blast. But what's interesting is that some insiders claim that what we know about Cheyenne Mountain is just the tip of the iceberg. The facility is said to go much deeper and is much more extensive than officially admitted. Then we've got the Raven Rock Mountain Complex in Pennsylvania, also known as Site R or the Underground Pentagon. This facility is carved into the granite of Raven Rock and is believed to be the emergency command center for the US military in case Washington, D.C. gets wiped out. It's said to have up to 900,000 square feet of interior space. But get this, there are rumors that Raven Rock has entire underground cities complete with streets, buildings, and even a subterranean lake. Of course, the government doesn't confirm or deny these claims. Next is the Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center in Virginia. This place is run by FEMA and is supposed to be where the US government would operate from in case of a national disaster. It's said to have underground bunkers that can house several thousand people, its own police and fire departments, and even a radio and TV studio to communicate with survivors after a catastrophe. But some whistleblowers have suggested that Mount Weather is actually the seat of a shadow government, ready to take control at a moment's notice. Okay, but here's where it gets wild. There are alleged connections between these bases. Supposedly, there's a network of high-speed maglev trains running through deep underground tunnels, connecting these domes and others across the country. Some people claim that you could travel from the East Coast to the West Coast in just a couple of hours using this secret subway system. And apparently it's not just in the US. There are reports of similar facilities all over the world, like the Pine Gap facility in Australia. Officially, it's a joint defense space research facility, but there are theories that it goes miles deep into the Earth and houses advanced alien technology. Then I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the Dulce base in New Mexico. Now this one's not officially acknowledged, but there are the stories about a massive underground facility jointly run by humans and extraterrestrials. People talk about multiple underground levels dedicated to genetic experiments, alien technology, and even cloning facilities. Just to be clear, I'm not saying the claims about the aliens are true, or that they come from space. That's just a theme that gets brought up a lot with these secret bases. But it could be a cover for the government possessing advanced tech far beyond the public's knowledge, or perhaps they come from breakaway civilizations. The thing is, with the boring technology that we have today, creating these vast underground networks isn't just possible, it's practical. Companies like Elon Musk's The Boring Company have shown how quickly and efficiently we can dig tunnels. And that's just the tech that they're showing us. Imagine what kind of advanced boring machines might exist in classified military projects. Now, some of you may think that this underground boring tech is some new, cutting-edge stuff, but the crazy thing is, people have been dreaming up and even trying to build these underground machines for over a century. In 1904, there was this guy named Pyotr Raskazov, who was from Moscow, who designed what might have been the first underground self-propelled combat unit. And this is in 1904. Unfortunately, his designs got lost during World War I, only to pop up later in Germany. But it shows that people were thinking about this stuff even back then. Interestingly, in the 1930s, in the Soviet Union, a guy named Treblev came up with what he called the underground boat. It was basically a capsule-shaped machine with a drill on the nose, a screw, and two pairs of jacks at the back that worked like a mole's paws. This thing could supposedly be controlled from inside or outside through a cable, and it actually worked, moving at about 10 meters per hour. Not super fast, but I mean, it was moving underground. But it gets even crazier. At the same time, in Nazi Germany, they were cooking up their own underground vehicles. The names kind of sound like they're right out of a sci-fi novel, Subterrane and Midgardschlange. The Midgardschlange was supposed to be this massive, modular, super amphibian that could move on land, underground, and even underwater. We're talking about a machine 400 to 525 meters long, with a displacement of 60,000 tons, and they allegedly tested this in 1939. Okay, so I know many of you are thinking this sounds like some far-fetched comic book stuff, and yeah, probably some of it is exaggerated, but the thing is, after World War II, Soviet counterintelligence found some weird, unexplained tunnels near Königsberg, along with what they thought were the remains of the Midgardschlange. So maybe there was something to these wild ideas after all. But wait, in the 1950s, there were reports of a mechanical mole being developed. And then in 1964, the Soviets unveiled something called the Battle Mole. It wasn't just a drill, we're talking about a nuclear-powered submarine. The project was so classified, it was even more secret than the Soviet nuclear program. The Battle Mole was no joke. It had a titanium body, was about to 3 to 4 meters in diameter, and 25 to 35 meters long. They say it could move through solid rock at speeds between 7 and 15 kilometers per hour. That's faster than most people can run, and this thing was going through solid rock. And it gets crazy because the Soviets had some pretty terrifying plans for this machine. One of the most alarming missions they thought up was to send it off to the California coast, burrow into geologically unstable areas, and plant nuclear charges. The idea was that they could set these off to cause earthquakes, tsunamis, and other massively destructive events. It's basically a secret underground doomsday weapon. They even tested this thing in the Ural Mountains, and apparently, it went through rock like a knife through butter. In 1964, during a test run, the Battle Mole allegedly exploded while it was underground, killing everyone on board and bringing the whole project to a screeching halt. Now, I'm not saying all this definitely happened, But the thing is, we know governments were seriously looking into this tech. And if they were thinking about this stuff back in the early 1900s, imagine what they might have now that we don't know about. So yeah, we've been talking about these modern underground bases and secret tunnels, but the thing is, this underground tech might go back way further than we think. I'm talking 18th and 19th century stuff that'll make you wonder what's really been going on beneath our feet all this time. This is pretty mind-blowing. In 1799, this guy named George Medhurst came up with an idea to move goods through cast iron pipes using air pressure. By 1844, he built a railway station in London using pneumatics. Just think about that for a second. In 1844, when most people were still getting around by horse and carriage, these people were literally zooming through underground tubes. By the mid-1850s, they had pneumatic railways popping up in Dublin, London, and Paris. In London, they had this thing called the pneumatic dispatch system. It was meant for parcels, but it was big enough to carry people. In fact, in 1865, the Duke of Buckingham took a ride through it. I mean, really? A duke crawling into what's basically a giant mail tube for a joyride? It's almost like they found this tech and were like, dude, check it out, we can actually fit in here. In 1867 in New York, they had the Beach Pneumatic Transit. And it wasn't just little mail tubes, we're talking about a legit underground transit system. And this was 37 years before the New York City subway as we know it today. But I think the interesting thing about this is when you look at the photos of these old pneumatic systems, they look insanely advanced for their time. And then you look at our modern subway that came after, and it just looks like we took a massive step backwards. It's almost as if we forgot how to do something amazing and had to start all over. And the official story is that all these tunnels were dug out by hand, with basic tools like shovels and wheelbarrows. But let's think about that for a second. In 2018, Seattle spent 6 years and $80 million on a tunnel boring machine to dig a single tunnel downtown. And they're telling us that in the 1860s, they carved out entire networks of tunnels under major cities with, what, pickaxes and elbow grease? Something's not adding up. And when you look at the photos of these old tunnels, they don't look like they were freshly dug. You could say ancient, like they were being uncovered rather than built. It's almost as if these 19th century engineers found something old and tried to get it working again. And interestingly, there are accounts of tunnel boring machines being used as far back as 1846. A guy named Frederick Beaumont supposedly came up with one during the Second Industrial Revolution. But when you look at what they claim these machines could do compared to our modern tunnel borers, it's kind of hard to believe. It really makes you think, what if these weren't new inventions at all? What if they were rediscoveries of much older tech? And this gets into some other bizarre phenomenon that's reported all around the world. It's called the hum. So what is it exactly? It's this low frequency sound that some people hear, but others can't. It's like a low rumble or a droning sound. Supposedly, only about 2% of people in affected areas can hear it, and each person hears it at a slightly different frequency, usually between 32 and 80 Hz, and that's pretty low. I mean, most of us can't even hear sounds that low. And some people might just say, oh, it's tinnitus or something. But it gets weird because people report that it's worse indoors and outdoors. Some people can even move away from it like it has a specific range. One person in Taos said that they could hear it within a 30-mile radius. It's almost as if there's some kind of source, but nobody can pinpoint exactly what or where it is. So what's causing it? Well, some researchers think that it might be related to industrial equipment or high-pressure gas pipelines. But there are people that believe the hum might be connected to secret underground activities. I mean, think about it. With all these underground bases and tunnels, what if some of that machinery, some type of boring tech, or who knows what else they've got down there, is causing this sound? Interestingly, the hum seems to avoid publicity. There are reports of it subsiding when there's increased local press coverage. almost like whatever's causing it can be turned off or redirected when too many people start asking questions. Well, let's keep going deeper. There's something called continuity of government programs, or COG for short. Now, on the surface, it sounds pretty legit, but it's about making sure the government can keep running if something catastrophic happens. This COG program has underground components. We're talking about massive, fully equipped bunkers that could house key government officials for months, maybe even years. And these are real places, just like Raven Rock, like we were talking about. Many believe these aren't just for emergencies, that there's a shadow government already operating out of these facilities. A whole parallel power structure making decisions that affect us all, hidden away deep underground, a literal deep state. And there's definitely more to this, from global surveillance operations to bioweapon development, human trafficking, and even cloning facilities, all occurring underneath the surface and occulted. We can say for certain that in the modern day, there are indeed underground cities, bunkers, and tunnels that are hidden. Some we know about, others are so classified that even mentioning them probably gets you on some government watch list. But is this just a recent thing? Like, did people in the last 300 years suddenly think to build some underground cool lairs, or is there something more to all those myths and legends about advanced civilizations beneath the earth? Well, the ancient Greeks, if they even existed, were obsessed with the idea of an underworld. Plato, for example, in his dialogue Phaedo, he doesn't just describe the underworld as some vague, spooky place. He talks about a whole system of underground rivers, vast hollows, and caverns beneath the Earth's surface. He even describes how these underground waterways connected to the oceans that we see on the surface. He goes on to talk about Tartarus. And this is interesting because in Greek mythology, Tartarus isn't just some vague part of the underworld. Plato describes it as a massive cavity that goes right through the earth. It's like the heart of this whole underground system, where all those rivers that we just talked about come together and then flow out again. And it's not just a few caves. Apparently there's an entire world beneath our feet. Plato's description of Tartarus goes beyond just a place of punishment. He presents it as a realm with its own geography, rivers, and complex systems. The name Tartarus bears a striking similarity to Tartaria. And it's an interesting connection because it could be a possibility that Tartarus in Greek mythology could be preserving memories of an actual underground civilization. According to Plato, the neutral go to the underworld temporarily before returning to Earth. The wicked are cast into Tartarus permanently. The virtuous ascend to what he calls the true surface of the Earth, a place of incredible beauty and advancement. What if these aren't just metaphors, but possibly distorted historical accounts? The underworld journey of neutral souls could represent the common experience of surface dwellers. The permanent exile to Tartarus might reflect ancient advanced societies seeking refuge underground following major cataclysms. And it's not just Plato. Homer, in the Odyssey, describes the entrance to the underworld as a physical place that Odysseus actually visits. It's not just some metaphorical afterlife, but a real location with its own geography and inhabitants. Another account comes from the Greek historian Xenophon in his work Anabasis. While not specifically mentioning underground cities, he describes the people of Armenia living in underground homes. Quote, "Their houses were underground, with a mouth like that of a well, but spacious below. And while entrances were tunneled down for the beast of burden, the human inhabitants descended by a ladder." End quote. The ancient Greek geographer Strabo also mentions underground dwellings in his work Geography. He describes the troglodytes, cave-dwelling peoples in various parts of the world, including areas in the Caucasus and North Africa. Then you've got Virgil's Aeneid, where Aeneas takes a trip to the underworld through a cave near Naples. Virgil describes it as a bustling underground city, with its own laws, judges, and different regions for different types of souls. The idea of hell is depicted as a fiery underground realm. It's not just in Greek mythology that we see this concept of an underworld. Tons of cultures have similar ideas, and they almost always place these realms beneath the Earth's surface. Think about it. In Christianity, hell is often described as being in the depths or the pit. Islamic traditions talk about Jahannam, which is also depicted as a place deep underground. Even in Norse mythology, you've got hell, which is where we get the word from, is described as being down or below. What if these descriptions aren't just about creating a scary image for sinners, but instead they're based on some kind of ancient knowledge or experience? It would make more sense if these underworld realms weren't just mythical places, but memories of actual underground civilizations. Maybe not all of them were advanced utopias. Some could have been harsh places, populated by exiles or criminals. Over time, as the memory of these places faded, they might have morphed in our stories into realms of punishment and torment. There are other famous hellmouth paintings from the Renaissance period, depicting massive, gaping maws representing the entrance to hell. These artistic representations have roots in ancient folklore, where caves and openings in the earth were often seen as portals to the underworld. Such mouth caves appear in myths and legends across various cultures, symbolizing passages to hidden realms beneath the surface. In Irish folklore, numerous tales speak of underground realms and passageways. The Cave of Croghan, also known as Ireland's Gate to Hell, features prominently in Celtic mythology. Legend says strange creatures would emerge from this ancient cave and roam the Earth's surface. Medieval Irish literature tells of knights and saints embarking on pilgrimages to a cave on Station Island in County Donegal. These spiritual journeys allegedly took them into the Earth's interior, to a place of purgatory where souls were cleansed. In County Down, Northern Ireland, local myth speaks of tunnels leading to the subterranean home of the Tuatha De Danann, the mythical race credited with introducing Druidism to Ireland before retreating underground. In Norse cosmology, the world is divided into 9 realms. Several of these realms are associated with the underworld or underground spaces. Niflheim, this is one of the primordial realms, a place of ice and mist, often associated with the underworld. It's considered to be located in the lowest level of the Norse universe. Then there's Svartalheim, the realm of the dwarves, also called dark elves in some sources. This underground subterranean world is where skilled craftsmen forge magical items and weapons for the gods. Mimir's Well, located beneath one of Yggdrasil's roots. This well contains wisdom and knowledge. Odin sacrificed an eye to drink from it. The Hall of Sindri, a golden hall located underground where some of the righteous dead are said to dwell after Ragnarok. Loki's Cave. After being bound by the gods, Loki is said to be imprisoned in a cave deep underground until Ragnarok. These underground realms in Norse mythology aren't just places of the dead. They're often sources of power, wisdom, and magical craftsmanship. The dwarves, master craftsmen who live underground, create some of the most powerful artifacts in Norse myths, including Thor's hammer and Odin's spear. In Hindu cosmology, you find the concept of Patala, which is described as a whole series of subterranean realms. But interestingly, this realm is said to be inhabited by the Naga. The Nagas are described as serpent beings, often depicted as half human, half snake. In some texts, they're said to be incredibly advanced, with technological and spiritual knowledge far beyond that of the surface dwellers. Their underground cities are described as having palaces adorned with jewels, advanced technology, and a quality of life that rivals or even surpasses that of the gods. The Bhagavata Purana's description of the 7 lower regions, called Vilas Vargas, or subterranean heavens, bears a striking resemblance to other mythical underground realms like Shambhala or Agartha. These Patala regions are portrayed as plains or levels beneath the earth, supposedly more opulent and advanced than even the celestial realms above. Life in these subterranean worlds is described as one of unparalleled pleasure, wealth, and luxury, free from any form of distress. much like the utopian descriptions of Shambhala. Interestingly, Patala has no sunlight. Instead, the darkness is dispelled by the radiance of jewels worn by its inhabitants, suggesting an alternative form of energy or technology. Perhaps more intriguingly, Patala is said to be free from old age, sweat, and disease. In China, we find Diyu, the underground realm of the dead. Interestingly, Diyu is described as a complex bureaucracy, mirroring the imperial Chinese government. It's a place where souls are judged, rehabilitated, and eventually reincarnated. The emphasis here seems to be on order and structure, even in the afterlife. Then we have the Mayan underworld, Xibalba, ruled by death gods and filled with all sorts of trials and dangers. But in Mayan myths, heroes sometimes journey to Xibalba and return. This suggests that the Maya saw the underworld as a real place that it could be visited and returned from, not just a metaphorical realm of the dead. In ancient Sumerian mythology, the underworld, known as Kur or Irkala, was ruled by Inanna's sister, Ereshkigal. And this underworld was not just the realm of the dead either, but a multi-layered, highly structured domain. The myth of Inanna's descent is interesting because in order to reach the underworld, Inanna must pass through 7 gates. At each gate, she's required to remove a piece of her clothing or jewelry, symbols of her power and identity. This process mirrors the stages of initiation in many secret societies, where the initiate must gradually strip away their old identity to be reborn into a new understanding. By the time Inanna reaches the innermost part of the underworld, she is completely naked and powerless. This idea of an underworld with multiple layers, each requiring a specific sacrifice or transformation to enter, is remarkably similar to the graduated levels of initiation found in mystery schools and secret societies throughout history. Inanna is then killed by Ereshkigal and hung on a hook, only to be resurrected 3 days later. This death and rebirth cycle is a central theme in many initiatory rites, symbolizing the death of the old self and the emergence of the initiated enlightened being. The Egyptian underworld, known as Duat, was a vast mysterious region that held secrets of transformation and rebirth. One of the most fascinating aspects of Duat is its geography. According to the Book of the Dead and other ancient texts, Duat was a series of caverns and chambers beneath the earth, divided into various regions and levels. This underground realm was said to be traversed by the sun god Ra during the night hours, in a journey that symbolized death and rebirth. A part of this journey, there was the concept of hidden chambers. These were secret areas within Duat that contained special knowledge and power. Only those who knew the correct spells and had the proper understanding could access these chambers. Zoroaster's Cave, a sacred site in ancient Persian tradition, is said to be where the prophet Zoroaster received his divine revelations. This cavern, nestled in the mountains of ancient Persia, served as a gateway between the physical and spiritual realms. Within its depths, some traditions suggest that the cave was not merely a physical location, but a metaphysical space where the boundaries between dimensions thinned, allowing Zoroaster to access higher planes of consciousness. This subterranean sanctuary became the birthplace of a religion that would influence spiritual thought for millennia, embodying the concept that profound wisdom and cosmic truths often emerge from the hidden depths of the earth. When we consider the extensive underground tombs and chambers the Egyptians built, like the labyrinthine structure beneath the Hawara pyramid that Herodotus described as having 3,000 rooms, it's not hard to imagine that these underworld myths might have been inspired by real subterranean explorations. Herodotus claimed to have partially explored himself. He described it as follows, quote, "I have seen this building, and it is beyond my power to describe. It must have cost more in labor and money than all the walls and public works of the Greeks put together, though no one would deny that the temples at Ephesus and Samos are remarkable buildings. The pyramids too are astonishing structures, each one of them equal to many of the most ambitious works of Greece. But the labyrinth surpasses them. It has 12 covered courts, 6 in a row facing north, 6 south, The gates of the one range exactly fronting the gates of the other. Inside, the building is of 2 stories and contains 3,000 rooms, of which half are underground, and the other half directly above them. I was taken through the rooms in the upper story, so what I shall say of them is from my own observation. But the underground ones I can speak of only from report, because the Egyptians in charge refused to let me see them, as they contain the tombs of the kings who built the labyrinth, and also the tombs of the sacred crocodiles." End quote. What's striking about these myths is how detailed and structured these underground realms are. These are fully realized worlds with their own geography, inhabitants, and rules. The Naga of Hindu myths present an interesting possibility. What if there really are advanced beings living beneath the earth? These myths show that the idea of complex inhabited underground realms isn't unique to any one culture. It's a global phenomenon spanning continents and millennia, which begs the question, why did cultures all over the world, many of which supposedly had no contact with each other, all come up with similar ideas about vast populated worlds beneath our feet? Most of you probably know of Derinkuyu in Cappadocia, Turkey. This underground city could house up to 20,000 people and goes 18 stories deep. It had everything from living quarters to storage rooms, wells, and even wineries. The crazy part is that it was only rediscovered in 1963 when a man renovating his house stumbled upon a mysterious room behind a wall. It's also connected to other underground cities in the region by miles of tunnels. Some of these tunnels are unexplored to this day. The known network is vast, but there are hints that what we've discovered might only be a fraction of what's down there. Malta's underground world is just as mysterious. The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is a subterranean structure dating back to about 4000 BCE. It's a complex of halls, chambers, and passages hewn out of solid limestone. It goes 3 stories deep and is remarkably well preserved. The acoustic properties of the oracle room with the Hypogeum are particularly intriguing. Voices are amplified and reverberate throughout the structure, and some researchers suggest that this might have been used for ancient ritual purposes, possibly even to induce altered states of consciousness. Interestingly, Malta's underground has legends of giants. One particularly fascinating story relates to the discovery of enormous bones in the Hypogeum and other Maltese caves. In the 1600s, the historian Georgius Antonius Chantar wrote of enormous teeth and bones found in these underground chambers, which locals attributed to an ancient race of giants. Similar reports continued into the 20th century. In 1902, workmen allegedly discovered a long chamber filled with giant skeletons and ancient artifacts. Even more interesting, there are tales of secret chambers within the Hypogeum that are off limits to the public, rumored to contain evidence of these giant beings. Perhaps the most captivating tale associated with Malta's Hypogeum is the account of Lois Jessup, a British embassy employee. In the 1940s, Jessup claimed to have ventured into a restricted area of the Hypogeum. From a narrow ledge, she reportedly observed about 20 giant beings, each 20 to 25 feet tall, emerging from a lower opening. These entities, moving in single file, allegedly turned towards Jessup and beckoned to her with outstretched arms. The encounter was cut short when Jessup's companions pulled her back, and days later, a local newspaper supposedly reported that a schoolmaster and 30 students exploring the same area had disappeared without a trace, their rope mysteriously cut. For weeks after, cries were said to be heard from the underground, though no one was ever found. The Wieliczka salt mine in southern Poland, stretching for 287 kilometers and reaching depths of 327 meters, this underground labyrinth has been in continuous operation since the 13th century, making it one of the world's oldest salt mines. What sets Wieliczka apart is its transformation from a mere industrial site into an underground wonderland. Over the centuries, miners have carved out chambers, corridors, and even entire chapels from the salt. The mine's crown jewel is the Chapel of St. Kinga, a vast underground church where everything from chandeliers to altars is made of salt. The mine also houses underground lakes, where the water is more saline than the Dead Sea. Statues of historical and mythical figures, all carved from salt, populate the chambers. One of the most impressive is a sculpture of Pope John Paul II, honoring the Polish-born pontiff. The underground city of Naurs, located in northern France, is a hidden marvel dating back to the Middle Ages. This subterranean refuge consists of 28 galleries and 300 chambers spread across 3 kilometers, capable of sheltering up to 3,000 people. Originally created as a place of refuge during times of war and invasion, Naurs saw its most recent significant use during World War I. The city features an intricate network of passages, living quarters, and even a chapel. Orvieto, in central France, sits above a vast network of caves, tunnels, and wells, some dating back to Etruscan times over 2,500 years ago. This underground complex served multiple purposes throughout history. The Etruscans used it for storage, water collection, and possibly religious rituals. During medieval times, it provided escape routes and shelter during sieges. One of the most impressive features is the St. Patrick's Well, a 16th century engineering masterpiece. 2 spiral staircases, designed for donkeys carrying water vessels, wind around the central shaft without intersecting, allowing simultaneous ascent and descent. The underground city also includes pigeon breeding caves, used to raise birds for food and communication. Many noble families had their own private caves beneath their palaces, some which were used as workshops or for olive oil production. The Longyu Caves, discovered in 1992 in China's Zhejiang province, remain one of archaeology's most perplexing mysteries. These massive artificial caverns were accidentally uncovered when local villagers drained a pond, revealing a vast underground complex. The caves, carved into solid siltstone, cover an area of over 30,000 square meters with heights up to 30 meters. What's so baffling is the precision of their construction. The walls are smooth and uniform, with tool marks still visible, suggesting advanced excavation techniques. Even more puzzling, there are no historical records of their creation or purpose. The Hopi people of the southwestern United States have a rich tradition of underground worlds and beings. According to their legends, the current world we live in is the 4th world, and the previous 3 were destroyed by various catastrophes. During these times of destruction, the Ant people played a very important role. The Ant people, or Anusinum in the Hopi language, are described as industrious, hard-working beings who live in elaborate underground cities. When the first world was destroyed by fire, and later when the second world met its end through freezing, the Ant people provided sanctuary to the Hopi in their subterranean realm. These underground shelters are described as vast caverns, warm and safe, where the Hopi were taught agriculture, food preservation, and other survival skills. The layout of traditional Hopi kivas, underground chambers used for spiritual ceremonies, is said to mimic the form of these ancient ant chambers. In Mexican folklore, natives of the Trobriand Islands believe that their ancestors had come from a subterranean land through a cavern hole called Abucula. There are also legends that tells of a cave in a mountain 5 miles south of Ojinaga, and that Mexico is possessed by devilish creatures who came from inside the earth. The legend of Aztlan, the Aztecs' mythical homeland, centers on Chicomostoc. Aztec tradition believes that their ancient ancestors once lived in a white or bright land called Aztlan, and that they emerged from 7 caverns. These caves, located within a hill called Cojoacan, were believed to be the dwelling place of the Aztec ancestors. The 7 Nahua tribes reportedly emerged from these subterranean chambers before settling in Aztlan proper, which was described as an island in a lake. This subterranean land of Tlilapa, or Mictlan, a happy land governed by Quetzalcoatl and his lieutenant Totec, the same land from which he and the Toltecs had come in ancient times. In Native American lore, several tribes trace their origins to subterranean realms. The Mandan people believed their ancestors emerged from an underground land through a cave north of the Missouri River. Apache folklore speaks of a tunnel in Arizona leading to an inner earth inhabited by a mysterious tribe. Iroquois tradition holds that their forebears came from a world beneath the surface. Hopi elders maintain that Sivapu entrance in the Grand Canyon connects to the underworld. South American indigenous groups share similar beliefs. Brazilian Indians along the Paraíba River claim their ancestors emerged from an underground land, with many still residing within the earth. Inca legend states their forefathers came from caves east of Cusco, Peru. These narratives from diverse cultures across the Americas share a common thread, the belief that their ancestors originated from within the earth itself, suggesting a widespread and enduring concept of inner earth origins in indigenous cosmologies. In the Middle Ages, an ancient German myth held that some mountains located between Eisenach and Gotha hold a portal to the inner earth. The location is said to be Hörselberg, a mountain between Eisenach and Gotha in Germany, and was believed to house a mysterious underground realm. Local legend spoke of a cavern called Horselloch, from which strange sounds emanated. Rushing water, moans, and even diabolical laughter was heard. Some thought it was an entrance to purgatory, while others believed it led to the court of Venus, the pagan goddess of love. The most famous tale associated with the Hörselberg is that of Tannhäuser, a medieval Minnesinger. The legend tells of Tannhäuser entering the mountain, lured by Venus herself. He spent 7 years in her underground palace, indulging in revelry and passion. Eventually overcome with guilt and longing for the mortal world, Tannhäuser left to seek absolution. Tannhäuser's quest for forgiveness led him to Pope Urban IV, who declared his sin too great to be pardoned. Despairing, Tannhäuser returned to Venus's realm. Days later, the Pope's staff miraculously blossomed, signifying God's willingness to forgive. Messengers were sent to find Tannhäuser, but it was too late. He had already re-entered the mountain, never to be seen again. The legends of the underground Chud, also known as the Wide-Eye Chud, are prevalent in regions inhabited by the Finno-Ugric peoples, particularly where they encountered Slavic newcomers. These stories often describe the Chud retreating underground to avoid submission to the White Tsar, symbolizing the expanding Russian state. In some areas, these tales intertwine with the legends of the Belavaldia, a mythical happy land from Old Believer folklore. Even in recent times, locals in various parts of Russia have pointed out caves and holes in the ground, claiming them as entry points where the Chud descended. One such story from the Altai region goes, when the White Tsar came to Altai to fight and the white birch blossomed in our land, the Chud did not want to stay under the White Tsar. They went underground and blocked the passages with stones. These legends often include a promise of the Chud's return, bringing with them great knowledge and treasures when a happy time arrives. Most Chuds stand between 4 and 5 feet tall and are well proportioned. Though divided into male and female, they have an androgynous look to them and appear as children of 10 to 12 years old, though a few of the older ones do sport beards. Some of them do have eyes with very small, light-colored irises, for which they earn the moniker white-eyed, but others have eyes with large pupils the color of coal, or eyes with oversized blue or gray irises. Otherwise, they differ from one another in appearance, with some having golden blonde hair and light skin, and others exhibiting much darker complexions. The Samoyeds have their own version of this myth, referring to an underground people called Sertie. As recounted by a Samoyed to the naturalist Alexander Schrenk in 1855, the Sertie allegedly live underground, shunning sunlight. In one tale, a Nenets discovered a cave inhabited by the Sertie while digging. The Sertie offered directions to their wealthy kinsmen, but warned of their preference for darkness. Samoyed narrator emphasized the Sertie's supposed wealth in metals, attributing it to their subterranean dwelling, close to the sources of these valuable materials. And of course, there's Shambhala, often described as a hidden kingdom or spiritual realm. It's not just a mythical construct, Numerous accounts and historical references suggest Shambhala could be a tangible, albeit concealed, location. The consistent descriptions of its geographical features, advanced technology, and enlightened society across diverse cultures and time periods lend credence to its possible existence. One of the most compelling arguments for Shambhala's reality comes from Tibetan Buddhist text and oral traditions. These sources provide detailed accounts of the kingdom's layout, including specific landmarks and architectural features. The precision of these descriptions, coupled with reports of Tibetan lamas and explorers claiming to have visited Shambhala, suggests more than a purely symbolic interpretation. The alleged interactions between Shambhala's rulers and historical figures, such as Buddha and various Tibetan kings, anchor the kingdom in a historical context that's difficult to dismiss. Now that we've discussed ancient legends and myths, let's delve into the history of inner Earth stories. Many people believe this concept entered public consciousness through Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth. This is what commonly comes to mind when discussing inner Earth, again referencing the hollow Earth theory. However, there are stories that predate Verne by almost a century, and they're far stranger. While Verne's story is typically seen as the origin of sci-fi, when we look at older stories, there really was no fantasy genre, and so they become very strange and out of place. Let's begin with the origins of the hollow Earth theory. In the 17th century, Athanasius Kircher, a Jesuit priest and polymath, proposed a model of the Earth's interior that would lay the groundwork for future hollow Earth theories. In his 1665 work, Mundus Subterraneus, Kircher described the Earth as composed of 4 elements bound together in an intricate system of intercommunicating cavities beneath the planetary crust. The most significant of these was a subterranean channel of water running through the Earth from the North Pole to the South. While not exactly proposing a hollow Earth, Kircher's ideas of vast underground networks and channels would influence later thinkers. In the 18th century, we have Edmund Halley, the renowned British astronomer who's known for Halley's Comet. Halley took the concept further, proposing a theory of concentric spheres within the Earth. He suggested the planet consisted of several nested hollow spheres, each capable of supporting life. This idea would later be expanded on in more elaborate hollow Earth theories. Now, some skeptics will say that the hollow Earth theory has been debunked. The Schehallien experiment of 1774, while purporting to disprove the hollow Earth theory, it falls short of truly debunking the existence of vast underground caverns and hidden civilizations, and here's why. First, the experiment only measured the average density of the Earth, not its internal structure. While this higher than expected density seemed to rule out a completely hollow planet, it says nothing about the possibility of enormous cave systems or underground voids. The measurements were taken from a single mountain in Scotland, and so how are we going to extrapolate the results of such a localized experiment to the entire supposed globe? There could be significant variations in density and structure in other parts of the world. This experiment and technology was from the 1770s and was primitive by today's standards. The margin for error in their measurements and calculations was likely quite large. Small discrepancies could hide the existence of massive underground spaces. Even if the overall density matches a solid Earth, this doesn't preclude the existence of advanced civilizations living in networks of caverns and artificial structures. These beings could have technology far beyond our understanding, allowing them to create habitable spaces that are undetectable from the surface. The timing of this experiment is suspicious. It came at the height of the Enlightenment, when the establishment was eager to suppress alternative worldviews. What better way to discourage exploration of the Earth's interior than to declare it officially not hollow? The scientists involved were a part of the Royal Society, an organization with close ties to the British government and Freemasonry. Who's to say that they weren't pressured to produce results that would keep the public from discovering the truth about our world's inner realms? The concept of a hollow earth truly gained momentum in the early 19th century with John Cleese Sims Jr. In 1818, this former soldier and self-educated man issued his famous Circular Number 1, declaring that the earth is hollow and habitable within, containing a number of solid concentric spheres, one within another, and that it is open at the poles 12 or 16 degrees. Sims went so far as to pledge his life in support of this truth and offered to explore the hollow earth if supported in the endeavor. Sims' theories sparked a wave of interest and speculation. In 1820, a book titled Simsonia was published under the pseudonym Adam Seaborn, though many believe Sims himself was the author. This work is considered one of the first novels set in a hollow earth, predating Verne's more famous work by decades. Simsonia presented a fictional account of a journey to the Earth's interior, blending adventure with Sims' theories. The impact of these ideas extended beyond literature. In 1836, the United States Congress passed a bill establishing what would become the first and most famous American naval scientific exploration, the United States Exploring Expedition. This expedition, which lasted from 1838 to 1842, was partially inspired by Sims' theories. While it didn't prove the existence of a hollow earth, it led to the collection of over 50,000 specimens and the eventual establishment of the Smithsonian Institution to house them. Ludwig Holberg's The Journey of Niels Klim to the World Underground was almost certainly the first fictional depiction of hollow earth, published in 1741. It predates Jules Verne's more famous hollow earth story by over a century. This satirical science fiction novel follows the adventures of Niels Klim, who falls through the Earth's crust into a subterranean world. The underground realm, centered around a planet called Nazar, orbits an inner sun and possesses its own miniature solar system. Klim's journey begins in the land of Potu, an anagram for Utopia, inhabited by a race of intelligent, mobile trees. These arboreal beings, possessing human-like qualities, form a sophisticated society with advanced moral and philosophical principles. The trees vary in species, such as oaks, limes, and poplars, each with distinct characteristics and social roles. As Klim travels across Nazar, he encounters a diverse array of fantastical creatures and societies. In Martinia, he meets a kingdom of intelligent apes that like to wear wigs. While in Pyglossia, he finds humans with a really weird anatomical quirk. They have no mouths, so they literally speak out of their butt. This leads to extremely foul-smelling conversations. Due to their unusual method of speech, conversations with Pyglossians are described as both disagreeable and offensive. The fetid smell accompanying their speech is so potent that it can linger in enclosed spaces, requiring the burning of incense to clear the air. Despite their off-putting method of communication, the Pyglossians attempt to maintain civility. They greet others by saluting from behind, adhering to their cultural norms. Interestingly, certain professions among the Pyglossians, such as barbers, are noted to be even more talkative than their European counterparts, magnifying the unpleasant aspects of their speech. Another strange creature Klim encounters are the Kupak, enormous birds that periodically visit Nazar. These birds serve as a means of banishment, carrying exiles to the firmament above in specially designed cages. Holberg's work also features intriguing technological concepts. In one passage, Klim describes vessels that move through water without rowers, propelled by secret springs and machines, with astonishing rapidity. Which is strange for a fantasy story, as this depiction of automated water transport predates the invention of steamboats by over 60 years, and particularly striking given the marine-time technology of the 1740s, which relied primarily on wind power for large vessels and human power for smaller craft. The novel's intricate structure and detailed descriptions of underground societies raise intriguing questions about the source of Holberg's inspiration. It is easy to dismiss the work as pure fantasy, but the complexity of the world building makes us consider alternative possibilities. Could Holberg have had access to obscure information or forgotten legends about subterranean realms? Language and communication play a crucial role in the story, with Clem learning various languages throughout his journey. On Crochet Island, he meets beings that resemble musical instruments, specifically upright basses. These creatures have long necks with small heads, slender bodies covered with a smooth bark or rind, and a bridge with 4 strings positioned above their navels. They move by hopping on a single foot and communicate their music. The descriptions of these bass-like beings is pretty detailed and bizarre, and they play melodies to convey meaning, with different musical styles indicating various types of discourse. Holberg's novel stands out for its blend of seemingly utopian and dystopian elements, its use of the Hollow Earth concept, and its vivid depictions of fantastic creatures and societies. Perhaps this novel serves not just as an entertaining narrative, but as a veiled revelation of hidden knowledge about our world and what lies beneath the surface. But this is not even the earliest example. There's another story that could be said to be even stranger. It's called Lamechus, or the Extraordinary Voyages of an Egyptian in the Inner Earth, with the Discovery of the Island of the Sylphs, by Charles de Fioul-Mouilly, is a forgotten yet remarkably unusual and original novel. Published in 1735, this 650-page epic predates many well-known Hollow Earth stories. It's not considered a Hollow Earth story because it doesn't really get into the theory of inner concentric spheres, but instead involves a vast underground kingdom. The narrative follows the Egyptian Lamechus on his extraordinary journey, beginning with the adventures of his father, a high priest in ancient Egypt. As the tale progresses, we meet Princess Nasildale and Prince Motokoa, exiles from neighboring North African kingdoms who have been banished to the underground world. The most interesting underground sequence involves Prince Motokoa and his mother. Lowered into a bottomless pit in some type of initiation ritual, they find themselves in a vast cave world teeming with fantastic creatures. Among the most striking are the Worm Men, colossal beings with humanoid upper bodies and serpentine lower halves. These monsters, as they're called, tower over humans, their marbled red skin glistening in the subterranean light. Their faces are a grotesque fusion of human and animal features. Fat, flat noses bend down to nearly obscure their upper lips, while small round eyes peer out from beneath thick bushy eyebrows. Perhaps most unsettling is how their beards seem to merge seamlessly with their hair covering their bodies. Their society is as complex as their physiology, with a structured hierarchy led by King Zarauf. They dwell in the underground kingdom of Trifaldae, governed by a council of elders known as the Elders of Kinzadaor. Their culture includes a rich religious life centered around the worship of a deity named Verfundverne, and they possess advanced weaponry like the mysterious Zenguis. Communication among the Wormen is also strange, consisting of buzzing or twanging sounds, though some have mastered human languages. It seems that this could be referring to the Nagas of Hindu legend. Which is interesting because sharing the subterranean realm are the Blue People. Apparently their skin is artificially dyed for both protection and status. The women of this race often have paler complexions, and their society is rich with symbolic gestures and rituals. The underground world is also home to the Amphicleocles, descendants of the Hor-His-Hanha, the mythical third son of the sun. The men of this race bear skin the color of vibrant red poppies, while the women maintain an almost pure white complexion with just a hint of color. Adding to this menagerie are the Sylphs, ethereal winged beings standing about 6 feet tall. Their bird-like bodies lack feathers, instead covered in milky white skin, and they possess extraordinary long hair. These beings come in 2 distinct types, though the details of the second remain shrouded in mystery. Then there are the Toadmen, creatures as tall as humans but with the appearance of giant toads. Their vaguely human faces contrast sharply with their yellow, black-spotted skin. And interestingly, these beings ride giant worms as if they were horses. So yeah, we have blue people, hybrid worm people, toad men riding giant worms like horses, and all sorts of other crazy stuff. But not only that, there's also this reference to early propeller technology in boats. Is this some kind of antiquitech? Like an ancient motorboat or ship? Listen to this. Quote, "We climbed into a small round boat with a wheel attached to each side with blades that were used as oars. A double handle turned them both at the same time. He barely touched them and we were moving off so fast it scared me." End quote. I mean, come on, this is in the early 1700s, almost a century before propellers were supposedly invented. It seems pretty strange that Mui would describe something so similar to modern propeller-driven boats, unless it already existed and was just kept secret. Now there is one more story worth covering that is even earlier, predating both Lamachus and Niels Klim's adventures. This tale, titled Account of a Voyage from the Arctic Pole to the Antarctic Pole through the Center of the World, was published anonymously in 1721 and set in 1714. The story begins with a whaling expedition off the coast of Greenland. The ship is suddenly caught in a massive whirlpool, described as a bottomless pit into which the waters of the sea flowed through to the center of the earth and out to the Antarctic. This description has led many to believe the subsequent events take place inside the earth. However, the actual journey through the earth's interior is glossed over entirely. The crew just spends this time huddled in the ship's hold, emerging only when they reach the Antarctic. What makes this story fascinating is not its depiction of an inner Earth realm, but rather its vivid descriptions of the Antarctic region. The majority of the novel is devoted to detailing the strange flora and fauna of this southern polar landscape. The crew encounters giant flying fish capable of attacking and killing sailors, and in a warm valley filled with roses, they discover a mysterious white stone structure covered in indecipherable inscriptions. This strange monument hints at the possibility of a lost civilization, though whether it exists on the surface or beneath it is left to the reader's imagination. The structure is described as having a large triangular stone atop 6 columns, all covered in bizarre writing that none of the crew can recognize. Now let's discuss some strange accounts, some even historical, that suggest there are hidden civilizations existing underground. Remember, this has nothing to do with Hollow Earth. It's just the idea that, at some point in history, whether in ancient times or more recently, societies and cities have been founded inside the Earth in large caverns, and that this has either been lost or suppressed in our history books. I wanted to start with the work of Heinrich Kusch, as he seems to be one of the leading archaeologists on the subject of secret underground worlds. His work hasn't been fully translated into English, so much of it is still not widely known. Kusch is most known for documenting the extensive underground tunnel system beneath Europe. While this has been covered by several other alternative historians, one particularly intriguing aspect is found in his third book, Secret Underworld. Here, he discusses some fascinating historical accounts about a secret trade deal in the 16th century with an underground people. Here is a section from his book. Quote, "From the second half of the 16th century until the 18th century, these decrees were executed by the clergy, partly supported by the Inquisition, witch hunts. The church established the Inquisition in the year 1233 to protect itself from critics of church orders, and labeled these critics as heretics to suppress them. Among these critics were the Knights Templar, who allegedly gained access to unconfirmed information in 1226 that suggested an early visit from foreign races to our world. As we can see from the years mentioned, these events occurred only 7 years apart. From 1307, Friday, October 13th and on, hundreds of Templars were persecuted and killed upon the orders of French King Philip IV, and with the support of the Church, represented by Pope Clement V, until April 11, 1314, because they had become too wealthy and powerful through their knowledge. Today, we can only interpret such actions by the then World Church as deliberate executions in the name of God, where intelligent and innocent people were burned at the stake or tortured to death. This later formed the basis for the hunt, starting in the 16th century for inconvenient initiates from the population who knew about the connections between the church and the nobility to the underworld, and could thus easily be denounced as witches or wizards and eliminated without issue. For with them, their knowledge also died. For better understanding, we present below an excerpt from the previously mentioned Noble Act from the year 1592, which briefly describes the church's approach regarding the immediate sealing of underground facilities. Quote, date 1592, Arbogast Friedrich, son of Crescentia Friedrich, aunt of Joan Worm, between the valleys of the Great and Small Ponds, Arbogast, the God-blessed prospector at the age of around 60, while prospecting a copper vein, discovered a tunnel in the earth and immediately established good contacts with the Cayman, from which the family benefited greatly. However, in 1580, due to memorable events and concerns for the supposed common good of all, these contacts were interrupted by the Holy Church. They nevertheless continued to diligently care for the Sanadis located underground in the ancient hermitage on the Bergheide in Zolk, despite the adversities at the time, which in the future will also have to be respected by the Holy Roman Church. End of excerpt. Let's summarize this brief content of the text excerpt. A mineral prospector, Strahler, had discovered a tunnel while searching for copper deposits in the Upper Styrian Mountains near Kavong. Through this discovery, he made contact with members of an underground people called the Cayman, and his family conducted trade with the representatives of this underground people for a period still unknown to us. As the text further reveals, this underground people, who referred to themselves as Cayman, organized this trade which we would today call business connections. However, around 1580, the church forbade this contact. The text says, which the family benefited from, yet in 1580, due to the memorable events and concerns for the supposed common good of all, these contacts were interrupted by the Holy Church. End quote. I found that to be pretty crazy. This means, since the 16th century, the church was fully aware of these underground kingdoms, and apparently they were advanced enough to do business with. Then they went through the process of filling up many of these entrances and tunnels. Which is interesting because Heinrich Kusch also mentions that there were underground tunnels beneath the cities and churches, and that they had women covens that would meet underground. It goes to show that there may be truth to these legends of dwarves and beautiful, deceptive women that live underground. But here's another fascinating part of the book. Quote, thank God there are enough manuscripts in some monastery archives that serve as historical evidence, reaching even further back into our past and reporting on astonishing matters. For example, in a Franciscan monastery in the Austrian state of Burgenland, there is a document that refers to a Diocesan Synod, a church assembly, in Eichstätt on October 11th and 12th, 1447, led by Diocesan and Prince Bishop Johann III of Eich, 1404 to 1464. During the synod, a decree was passed to close entrances to the earth, and thereby hell. This decision was based on the Council of Basel, which Johann III had left early in 1447, where presumably the idea for such a decree was discussed or considered. It's also quite possible that there are even older documents written in medieval Latin from the 13th and 14th centuries in the countless church archives of Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. However, in the 15th century, this directive to close the gates to the earth or hell was not sufficiently followed. Thus, in the Council of Trent, 1543 to 1554, an expanded treatise was drafted in 1550, mandating that all entrances to the peoples of the underworld in all known countries of the world be sealed as quickly as possible. In the 16th century, the driving force and justification for these actions were the heavenly phenomena observed by the population. However, this immediately raises the question of what might have triggered the actions in the 15th century or earlier. Was it the technology of the underground peoples, which at the time would have appeared as magic or sorcery to the population? The manuscripts literally speak of wagons with technology that were used for transport in the underground tunnels. What exactly was meant by this? Certainly much can be interpreted here, but so far, we can only say one thing: we do not know yet. There may also be a direct connection in these old records between the Styrian mythical creatures, such as human mutations, dwarves, dragon-like beings, half-human, half-reptile animal, and the Uni or Muir women. These beings are said to live in the long tunnels and illuminated underground cities, as well as so-called blacks, who are often referred to in legends as synonyms for the devil. These figures are also frequently present in the stories about the partially very old underground facilities in castles and palaces, which have been confirmed by our decades-long scientific investigations and documentation in Western and Eastern Styria." End quote. Okay, so what this means is there were literal UFOs coming out of these underground entrances, and that there was technology being used to make these tunnels. If we remember those early Inner Earth stories, they all made reference to this. So perhaps this explains some of the early medieval paintings featuring UFOs. Are they advanced tech from the underworld? It's also interesting to note that dragons are typically associated with the underworld or caves. There are several legends discussing dragons in caves like St. George. And let's not forget the underground tunnel systems in the US. Almost every major city has its first street level underground, and they each have their own excuses. From flooding and great fires to prohibition. Some don't even have excuses. It's just a mystery why the early parts of the city are completely underground. And those are just the levels that we know about. It could go even further underground. If we consider that these cities were founded and repopulated, perhaps they were people from the old world that relocated underground. We know that the Freemasons used these tunnels to secretly traverse beneath the city without being noticed. But what if it goes further than that? Most of these tunnels have now been sealed in the modern day. But why? Why the need to keep this history secret for so many towns, leading to the legends of underground tunnels in several major cities? Could it be that the existence of these tunnels wouldn't work with the official mainstream story of history that we're given? Perhaps this connects with the Shaver mystery, a controversial series of stories that shook the science fiction world in the 1940s. Richard Sharp Shaver, an American writer, wrote to Amazing Stories magazine claiming his tales were not fiction, but truth. He insisted he had uncovered a hidden underground civilization with advanced technology that was influencing life on the surface. The magazine's editor, Ray Palmer, published Shaver's accounts as fact, sparking intense debate and fascination among readers. Shaver's journey into this underground world began in 1932 when he was working as a welder. He said that one day, by some freak occurrence, his welding gun started picking up thought transmissions from beings below. This bizarre experience opened his eyes to a whole hidden reality beneath our feet. According to Shaver, there were two main races living underground: the Taros, who were noble and human-like, and the Daros, a degenerate and sadistic bunch. These beings were supposedly left behind by an ancient advanced race that abandoned Earth due to harmful solar radiation. The underground dwellers, particularly the Daros, were said to have a significant and often malevolent influence on the surface world. Using their advanced ray technology, they could spy on surface dwellers, project tormenting thoughts into our minds, and even cause disasters and accidents. Shaver claimed they were responsible for everything from minor injuries to plane crashes. Shaver's accounts painted a picture of an incredibly advanced underground world. He described vast cavern cities filled with technology far beyond our own. These subterranean metropolises were said to be connected by high-speed train systems that could cover enormous distances in minutes. The Daros and Taros had access to powerful energy sources, allowing them to power their cities and fuel their advanced machinery. Shaver spoke of devices that could manipulate matter, control minds, and even alter reality itself. He claimed they possessed flying machines capable of interplanetary travel, and computers that could process information at unimaginable speeds. One of the most interesting aspects of Shaver's tales was the idea of secret elevators leading to this subterranean world. He spoke of hidden entrances in buildings, particularly in major cities, that would take unsuspecting people down to the caverns below. Some of his followers even claimed to have found these secret passages, with one woman reporting a harrowing experience of being taken to a deep sub-basement in Paris. In the last video, we were discussing Dorpa, which is a book from the late 1800s that discusses the connection between secret societies and the inner earth. Apparently, this is one of their most guarded secrets, as they have cities down there that are not known to the surface dwellers. There are other books from this time period that discuss a similar concept, with advanced enlightened beings living beneath the earth influencing the surface world. One of the most notable is The Coming Race by Edward Bulwer Lytton. Published in 1871, the book introduced the idea of an underground civilization with incredible spiritual and technological abilities, powered by a mysterious energy source known as vril. In The Coming Race, vril is described as an all-pervasive fluid that can be harnessed by the mind, giving its users almost godlike powers. These subterranean beings, called the vril ya, use this energy for everything from healing to powering their advanced machinery. They can even use it as a weapon, capable of destroying entire cities. The concept of vril caught on in occult circles, with some believing it to be a real energy source. Some secret societies reportedly formed around the idea of contacting or emulating these advanced underground beings. The notion of a hidden superior race influencing world events from below the surface has persisted in various forms of esoteric literature and conspiracy theories ever since. The idea of real and underground civilizations didn't just stay in the realm of fiction and occult circles. It apparently caught the attention of some high-ranking Nazis during World War II. There are claims that Hitler and his inner circle were obsessed with finding these subterranean realms and harnessing the power of vril. The Vril Society was indeed a real organization that existed in pre-Nazi Germany, founded in 1919 and closely associated with the Thule Society. This secret group was dedicated to exploring the concept of vril energy and its potential applications. Members of the society, which included some who would later become high-ranking Nazis, believed that mastering vril would grant them extraordinary powers. They were convinced that this energy could be used to create unbeatable weapons, enable communication with extraterrestrial beings, and even power advanced flying machines. The Nazi regime, under Hitler's leadership, didn't just entertain the Hollow Earth theory, they wholeheartedly embraced it as a fact. Hitler and several high-ranking Nazi officials were convinced the Earth was hollow, with entrances at the poles leading to vast inner realms. This belief influenced actual military strategy and scientific expeditions. They saw the inner Earth as a potential source of power, both mystical and technological, that could turn the tide of the war in their favor. The Nazis even used specially modified equipment, including infrared cameras and sensitive radio devices, in their attempts to detect hidden cavities or openings during their expeditions. There are wild stories about Nazi expeditions to Tibet and Antarctica, searching for entrances to the inner Earth. Some say they were looking for advanced technology left behind by these underground races, and others claim they actually made contact and formed alliances with these beings. I'm sure many of you have heard of Admiral Richard E. Byrd's incredible encounter with an advanced civilization in Antarctica. Byrd, a naval officer and polar explorer, led several expeditions to Antarctica, including Operation High Jump in 1946 to 1947. During one of his flights over the continent, Byrd discovered an entrance to the inner Earth and came face to face with beings of an advanced civilization. The story goes that Byrd's plane was guided by mysterious forces to a lush, temperate region beyond the pole. There, he met with representatives of an advanced race who shared their concerns about humanity's use of atomic weapons. They warned Byrd about the dangers facing the surface world and entrusted him with a message of peace to deliver to our leaders. Byrd's cryptic statements about the strategic importance of Antarctica and the need to explore the land beyond the pole really says a lot to support these claims. There's another interesting novel from the late 1800s that I didn't mention, and it's by Jules Verne. Everyone knows about Journey to the Center of the Earth, but he has another novel which I find interesting. It's called Child of the Cavern. It's important to note that Verne was associated with Freemasonry, as many of his stories incorporate Masonic and Rosicrucian secrets. I find it revealing that the cover for the story features an owl and the ray of light is in the shape of a square and compass. The story involves an underground city hidden beneath a coal mine in Scotland. And this isn't just a fantasy, the idea of vast underground structures is entirely possible with modern engineering. Many cities already have extensive underground networks, so the concept of a hidden subterranean city isn't far-fetched at all. In the novel, an orphan named Nell is discovered living in these underground caverns. She's never seen the surface world and is a part of a secret community thriving beneath the earth. Verne's detailed descriptions of underground life focus more on the natural wonders and the ingenuity of human adaptation rather than advanced technology. He paints this picture of a vast subterranean world with its own ecosystem, including underground lakes and unique flora. The community Nell belongs to has developed ways to survive in this environment, using the resources available to them in clever ways. While they don't possess futuristic technology, their methods of navigating, illuminating, and inhabiting the caverns showcase a deep understanding of their underground realm. What's interesting is how Verne implements elements of mystery and secrecy into the story, hinting at hidden knowledge and forgotten history. The very existence of this underground community, unknown to the surface world, raises questions about what other secrets might be lurking beneath our feet. This also gets into the City of Ember, where an entire city exists underground, completely cut off from the surface world. The inhabitants of Ember have no knowledge of the outside, believing their underground home is all that exists. The city was built as a refuge to preserve humanity, with a ticking clock on how long it can sustain itself. The founders of Ember left behind clues and instructions for future generations, much like the idea of secret societies passing down hidden truths through the ages. This is not just fantasy, but similar to how governments have built vast underground cities as contingency plans for disasters. One story we haven't discussed that's probably worth mentioning is Smoky God. Published in 1908, it tells the alleged true story of a Norwegian sailor, Olaf Jansen. In 1829, Jansen claimed to have sailed through an entrance at the North Pole into the Earth's hollow interior. He described a fantastic world with an inner sun, the Smoky God, populated by a race of giants who lived for centuries. There are also several accounts that are fascinating to consider. One of the most famous in history is the Green Children from Woolpit, a story that's captivated imaginations for centuries and continues to baffle historians and researchers to this day. In the 12th century, in the village of Woolpit, Suffolk, England, two children, a brother and sister, suddenly appeared at the edge of a field. What made their appearance so extraordinary wasn't just their unexpected arrival, but their skin was tinged with a striking shade of green. The villagers were understandably shocked. These children spoke an unknown language, wore strange clothing, and would only eat raw beans. Even more intriguing, when asked where they came from, the children described a twilight world with no sun, where everything was green. As time passed, the children gradually lost their green hue and learned to eat other foods. The boy, unfortunately, became sickly and died, but the girl survived and eventually learned to speak English. Her story, as related by medieval chroniclers, is fascinating. She claimed they came from an underground world called St. Martin's Land, where the sun never shone and twilight reigned eternal. They had followed the sound of bells through a cave and emerged into our world, blinded by the bright sunlight. What makes the Woolpit story so compelling is the detail in which it was recorded by multiple contemporary sources. It's not just a vague folktale, but a well-documented event that defies easy explanation. The legend of the Blue Mist people of Scotland, also known as the Blue Men of the Minch, is another interesting tale from the Hebrides Islands. The story goes that in the 17th century, inhabitants of the Hebrides, particularly around the Isle of Lewis, reported encounters with mysterious blue-skinned beings. These creatures were said to emerge from the caves along the coastline, often shrouded in blue mist, hence their name. According to local lore, the blue mist people were humanoid in appearance, but had distinctive blue tinge to their skin. They were described as being taller than average humans and possessing an otherworldly, almost ethereal quality. Witnesses claimed they spoke in an unknown language that sounded like the murmuring of waves. These beings weren't always seen. Sometimes their presence was only detected by an eerie blue mist that would roll in from the sea, accompanied by haunting melodic sounds. Fishermen reported seeing strange lights beneath the waves and hearing unearthly singing on calm nights. The blue mist people were said to interact occasionally with the islanders, sometimes trading unusual artifacts or sharing knowledge of weather patterns and fish movements. However, they always returned to their subterranean or underwater dwellings, leaving the locals to wonder about their true nature and origin. Some theories suggest that the Blue Mist people were connected to ancient Pictish tribes or were somehow related to the legendary Finn folk of Orcadian mythology. Others speculate that they might have been visitors from an advanced underground civilization. This is fascinating when we consider the blue people from the first Inner Earth novel Lemnicus, which could be based on truth. Mount Shasta is also deeply associated with numerous legends and disappearances. One of the craziest disappearances involves a 3-year-old boy who vanished while camping with his family near a large creek in 2010. After a frantic 5-hour search, the child was found lying in a thicket right next to a trail that searchers had been using. 3 weeks later, the boy told his grandmother a bizarre story about being taken by Grandma Cappy, who was actually a robot that took him to a creepy cave filled with spiders, purses, and guns. He described a ladder that, when climbed, made Grandma Cappy look like a robot in the light. The child also mentioned being made to lie down for a stomach examination and being asked to defecate on a sticky paper, though he couldn't comply. What makes this case even more unsettling is the grandmother's own experience a year prior in the same area. She recalled waking up one morning face down in the dirt outside her tent, with a puncture wound on the back of her head. She felt violently ill and strangely emotionless, initially attributing it to a spider bite. Her camping companion also woke up with a similar bite on the back of his neck and fell ill. The night before, they had seen what they thought were deer eyes shining red through the trees in their flashlight beams. Perhaps she was abducted and cloned for some type of hologram disguise. Mount Shasta has a bunch of interesting history, particularly when it comes to legends of hidden civilizations and mysterious beings. One myth centers around the idea of Lemuria, a lost continent whose survivors are said to inhabit a secret city called Telos within the mountain. This legend began in the late 19th century and gained significant traction with the 1905 publication of A Dweller on Two Planets by Frederick Spencer Oliver. The book described Lemurians living in an elaborate tunnel system beneath Mount Shasta, complete with jeweled walls and fur-carpeted floors. These beings were said to occasionally emerge dressed in white robes. The myth was further popularized in 1931 when Harvey Spencer Lewis, writing under a pseudonym, published a book about the hidden Lemurians of Mount Shasta through the ancient mystical order Rosicrucius, again connecting these underground civilizations to secret societies. Interestingly, in 1923, an intriguing article appeared in the Los Angeles Times, written by Edward Lancer. This piece brought widespread attention to the legends of Lemurians living on Mount Shasta. Lancer's account begins with his personal experience of witnessing a strange reddish-green light on the southern side of Mount Shasta while traveling on the Shasta Limited train. Intrigued by this phenomenon and the conductor's casual mention of Lemurians, Lancer decided to investigate further. He discovered that the existence of a mystic village on Mount Shasta was widely accepted by locals, including businessmen, explorers, and ranchers. Lancer references the work of Professor Edgar Lucien Larkin, director of the Mount Lowe Observatory, who claimed to have observed the Lemurian village through a powerful telescope. Larkin described seeing a great temple of carved marble and onyx, and a community of 600 to 1,000 people engaged in various industries and agriculture. The article goes on to describe the Lemurians as tall, barefoot men with close-cropped hair, dressed in spotless white robes. They were said to occasionally visit nearby towns to make purchases, always paying with gold nuggets. Their shopping habits were peculiar, buying large quantities of sulfur, salt, and lard. Lancer also mentions their alleged abilities, such as producing powerful light displays during their rituals, and the power to blend into their surroundings and become invisible. He notes their charitable actions, including donations to the American Red Cross during World War I and to earthquake relief efforts in Japan. The area is known to be a hotspot for UFO sightings, with some believing the mountain's distinctive lenticular clouds conceal these UFOs. This is also the origins of the I Am movement, where Guy Ballard claimed to have encountered the Count of St. Germain while hiking on Mount Shasta. Perhaps one of the most interesting legends is that of J.C. Brown. In 1904, Brown, a Welsh prospector hired by the Lord Cowdray Mining Company of England, was exploring the mountain when he claimed to have made an extraordinary discovery. According to his account, he stumbled upon a cave entrance that led to an 11-mile downward sloping tunnel. At the end of this vast underground passage, Brown said he found an astonishing sight: a massive cavern city filled with gold, strange artifacts, and remnants of an ancient advanced civilization. He described seeing rooms full of gold spears and shields, stone tablets carved with mysterious hieroglyphics, and perhaps most incredibly, perfectly preserved mummies of giant humanoids reaching heights of up to 10 feet. Brown kept this discovery secret for 30 years, perhaps out of fear of contractual obligations. Then in 1934, he finally shared his story with John C. Root in Stockton, California. Excited by the prospect of such a find, Root helped Brown assemble a team of 80 eager explorers to verify the claim and potentially excavate the site. On June 19, 1934, the day the expedition was set to depart, Brown vanished without a trace. He failed to meet the team at the agreed upon location, and despite extensive searching, was never seen or heard from again. His disappearance left the would-be explorers and the public baffled, turning what might have been the archaeological discovery of the century into one of Mount Shasta's most enduring mysteries. In Brazil, they have these mysterious tunnels that are said to have religious fortunes hidden deep inside. But the weird thing is, apparently the mainstream story is that these were built by giant sloths. Quote, the megafauna, both the giant armadillos and giant sloths, must have developed an absurd strength in their arms to be able to cut through rock and tough sediments that even a pickaxe would struggle to pierce. End quote. But what if these tunnels were actually made using some type of technology? Interestingly, in 1969, Hungarian-Argentine explorer Janos Juan Moritz claimed to have discovered a vast network of underground tunnels and chambers in the Ecuadorian province of Morona Santiago, near the border with Peru. Moritz said he was led to the caves by local Shuar indigenous people. According to Moritz, the cave system contained vast metallic libraries with thousands of metal books containing the history of humanity and advanced scientific knowledge, sculptures and artifacts made of gold and other precious metals, advanced technology of unknown origin, including a possible energy source, and evidence of an ancient, highly advanced civilization. The Pucegi Mountains in Romania are the subject of numerous legends and theories as well. Some claim the extensive tunnel networks exist beneath the mountains, allegedly connecting to distant locations like the Egyptian pyramids. These tunnels are said to be known only to a select few and may hide ancient treasures. The area is reported to have high energy levels, with locals and visitors describing unusual phenomena such as strange lights, unexplained healings, and periodic tremors. The Sphinx of Pucegi, a rock formation resembling the Egyptian Sphinx, is said to be a man-made creation and not a natural wonder. In 2003, rumors circulated about a secret chamber discovered within the mountain by Romania's Department Zero. The story included claims of alien technology and holographic records. Local legends speak of ancient tunnels throughout the mountains, allegedly allowing rapid travel across the Carpathians. Some believe these connect to a global network of underground bases. This is pretty crazy. There's the Nicholas Roerich's 1925 to 1928 Central Asian expedition, partially funded by the US government, and was supposed to be for botanical research and cultural studies. However, it had deeper, more esoteric purposes. The expedition was financially supported by Henry A. Wallace, future US Vice President, who shared Roerich's interest in spirituality and mysticism. The US Department of Agriculture officially sponsored the expedition with $50,000 for collecting drought-resistant plants. Wallace was a member of the Theosophical Society, which reveals his true interest in this expedition. He was interested in inner Earth and finding Shambhala. In the 1920s, before becoming vice president, Wallace exchanged numerous letters with Roerich. These letters, written in code, discuss spiritual matters and the concept of bringing about a new era of enlightenment. Wallace signed these letters as G for Galahad, but perhaps this is a reference to Masonry. Roerich's true goal was to find Shambhala, a mythical kingdom he believed existed inside a hollow earth. He saw Shambhala as a repository of ancient wisdom and advanced technology. During their journey through Asia, Roerich claimed to have encountered evidence of underground civilizations and advanced ancient technologies. He reported seeing mysterious lights and shiny shields in the sky, which he interpreted as signs of Shambhala's presence. In Mongolia, Roerich met with the Panchen Lama, receiving a blessing for his mission. He also claimed to have found ancient artifacts and text pointing to the existence of Shambhala. The expedition faced significant challenges, including a 5-month detention by Tibetan authorities. During this period, the group's activities and whereabouts were unknown to the outside world, fueling speculation about their true activities. It seems that Roerich became more secretive as they became closer to finding this secret realm. His paintings became more esoteric and even depicted the King of Shambhala. It seems that once he established a connection with this underground city, he stopped communicating with the surface governments. In the summer of 1927, the expedition, still watched over by most major powers of the era, managed to disappear from the eyes of the world for an entire year. Roerich's writings from this time blend factual observations with mystical interpretations. He spoke of tunnels leading to underground realms and encounters with keepers of ancient knowledge. Apparently, the reason for the year without communication is because they were held in Tibetan detainment camps, but perhaps we're not being told the entire story. It seems obvious that this entire expedition was really about finding inner Earth civilizations, as Helena Blavatsky, co-founder of the Theosophical Society, played a significant role in popularizing hollow earth theories in esoteric circles during the late 19th century. In her influential work, The Secret Doctrine, 1888, Blavatsky presented a complex cosmology that included the concept of inner earth realms. She described a series of underground caverns and tunnels, which she claimed were inhabited by advanced beings. Blavatsky's writings mentioned Shambhala and Agartha as subterranean kingdoms, describing them as repositories of ancient wisdom and advanced technology. She claimed these realms were home to highly evolved spiritual beings who guided humanity's development. According to Blavatsky, the hollow earth contained several levels, each corresponding to different stages of spiritual evolution. She suggested that access to these realms was possible through specific portals around the supposed globe, known only to initiates. This goes back to Edadorpa and the connection to underground cities and secret societies. There are people that have access to these locations, but it is guarded in secrecy. She claimed to have discovered Shambhala in the Gobi Desert, where she encountered the Great White Brotherhood, a group of highly evolved beings led by the Lord of the World, allegedly from Venus. According to Blavatsky, this underground city in Tibet was connected by subterranean tunnels, from which masters like Moray and Kut Humi would emerge to guide humanity. These beings were said to possess extraordinary powers, including telepathy, astral projection, and the ability to manipulate matter. Blavatsky asserted that they could transmit knowledge across vast distances and even influence world events. She described a cosmic battle between these White Brotherhood forces and the Dark Forces seeking to harm humanity. This struggle, she claimed, occasionally manifested in major historical events. Louis Jacquot was a French occult author and colonial judge who wrote extensively on Eastern religions, mysticism, and occult topics. Le Fils de Dieu, or The Son of God, was published in 1873 as a part of Jacquot's series of works on Eastern spirituality and occultism. The book primarily focuses on the life of Krishna, drawing parallels between Hindu and Christian traditions. In his work, Jacquot discusses the concept of subterranean cities in India. He claims these underground realms were inhabited by advanced beings with superior knowledge and technology. Jacquot suggests that these underground dwellers were remnants of an ancient, highly advanced civilization that predated known history. He links this idea to Hindu mythological accounts of previous world cycles or yugas. The author describes a vast network of underground tunnels and chambers stretching across India, connecting various sacred sites and ancient cities. Jacquot claims to have gathered information about these subterranean realms from ancient Sanskrit texts and oral traditions he encountered during his time in India. He proposes that certain Indian yogis and mystics had knowledge of and access to these hidden realms, using them as repositories of ancient wisdom and spiritual power. In 1884, French occultist Santive Dalvedre published Mission of the Jews, a work on secret world history. 2 years later, he wrote The Kingdom of Agartha, A Journey into the Hollow Earth, which expanded on his esoteric ideas. This book described Agartha, a vast underground realm ruled by a sovereign pontiff called the Brahma. According to Santive, Agartha had a population of millions and possessed technology far beyond the surface world, including electric railways, flying vehicles, and advanced lighting systems. The capital of Agartha centered around a great temple with a sacred dome. This dome was illuminated by special catoptric scales that produced an unusual chromatic light. The government followed a synarchic system with 3 branches: teaching, justice, and economy. Santive claimed Agartha housed an enormous subterranean library containing humanity's accumulated knowledge from over 556 centuries. He said initiates of Agartha could travel out of their bodies to explore other realms. They could also allegedly communicate with the dead and preserve souls. The crazy thing about this book is it describes strange experiments conducted in Agartha, including the breeding of unusual human and animal hybrids. One example he provided was of a human subspecies bred on a group of now vanished islands. These people were all over 6 feet tall, with elastic bones that could bend and return to their original shape. They had extraordinary strength and double-cavitied ears. Most strikingly, they possessed split tongues that allowed them to speak 2 different languages simultaneously. He also describes a species of small animals with turtle-like shells bearing a yellow X-shaped cross. These creatures had 4 eyes connected to a single brain and 4 mouths leading to 1 stomach. They could move in any direction due to feet arranged around the circumference of their bodies. Another hybrid he mentioned was a race of giant serpents that were completely harmless and allegedly had delicious flesh. It also mentioned formidable defenses, suggesting Agartha could unleash catastrophic forces if ever invaded. He suggested they could cause earthquakes and control volcanic activity. Agartha used a primordial language called Vatan, which had its own unique alphabet. Santive presented Agartha as the source of all ancient wisdom traditions, secretly guiding humanity's spiritual evolution. Now, this might sound like fantasy, but it's important to note that this is from 1886 and was one of the most influential works of 19th century occultism. Literal secret societies were formed on inner Earth civilizations like Fraternité des Polaires with the goal to make contact with the Gartha, believing it held ancient wisdom vital for humanity's evolution. Their practices combined elements of Martinism, Theosophy, and spiritualism, were designed to pierce the veil between worlds. The fact that influential figures like Maurice Magre and potentially even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle were drawn to these groups speaks to the power of these concepts. Moreover, the interest of political regimes can't be ignored. Nazi Germany's fascination with esoteric ideas, exemplified by their sponsorship of Otto Rahn's research into Cathar mysteries and the Holy Grail, suggests that they took these underground realm theories seriously. The idea of starting an underground civilization is not that far-fetched. There's this one channel I really like called Action Adventure Twins, and they're pretty insane. They go deep into these cave systems in the US and document their entire journey. There are a few videos that are pretty mind-blowing where they drop 400 feet into a massive open space, or kayak in an underground lake, explore river caves, and it really just makes you think, how could this all just be natural? Sure, some of it could be due to erosion, but some of the formations are perfectly flat, or even the large stadiums seem to contradict this theory of simply natural erosion. Plus, where does all this water go? It must be going somewhere. And if we consider Kircher's work, it seems that it goes inside to even deeper subterranean systems and then re-emerges on the surface. There are even glowworms in these caves, not only in New Zealand, but also in Alabama, which kind of seems like it belongs in a Hollow Earth fantasy story. The difficulty in exploring these caves is another factor. The most explored cave is Mammoth Caves with around 400 miles explored, but some geologists estimate that there could be 600 miles of undiscovered passageways. Mammoth Cave has a long history of exploration and tourism. In the early 19th century, guides would take visitors deep into the cave system, using ominous names for various features to spark interest and excitement. One such place was Sims Pit, named after Captain John Cleves Sims. Sims Pit was described as a dangerous, dry pit of unknown depth. It was promoted as a potential portal to the underworld. However, by the late 19th century, interest in Sims Pit had waned as new, more exciting parts of the cave were discovered. The passage leading to Sims Pit was later renamed Blackall Avenue after Dr. Christopher Blackall. In 1871, Blackall created a map of Mammoth Cave that proved its passages extended beyond the Mammoth Cave Estate's property. There are a few interesting names on this map, like the Gothic Chapel, Giant's Coffin, and End of Pensacola Avenue. The Giant's Coffin is interesting because they have found supposedly naturally mummified bodies here deep in the cave system. One of the most notable mummies is known as Bonhoof or Scudder's mummy. Carbon dating suggests it's between 3,000 to 4,000 years old. But what makes this mummy particularly interesting is its reported red or fawn colored hair. Another mummy, sometimes referred to as the Woman of Importance, is also said to date back over 3,000 years and reportedly has dark red hair. The constant temperature of 55 degrees Fahrenheit within the caves has contributed to the excellent preservation of these bodies. A smaller mummy, nicknamed Little Alice, stands at about 3.5 feet tall and is also estimated to be 3,000 to 4,000 years old. Like the others, it was naturally mummified by the dry cave atmosphere. This gets into the giants of Kentucky. In 1885, Professor J.F. Brown of Berea College reportedly examined fossilized human footprints in Rockcastle County. These prints were said to be preserved in Carboniferous limestone, suggesting an impossibly ancient date for human presence. Dr. Wilbur Greeley Burroughs, in 1930, claimed to have found 12 9.5-inch human tracks in Pottsville sandstone dated to over 300 million years old. In 1965, There was a report of an 8-foot 9-inch skeleton found buried under a rock ledge along Holly Creek in east central Kentucky. The Mammoth Cave system allegedly contains evidence of a pre-existing race of giant-sized humans with red hair. If this is the case, then it would really make sense on why some of these names were chosen for certain cave formations, and perhaps the other legends involving the Tuatha and red-haired giants forming civilizations underground. It's the same thing with Lovelock Cave. In 1806, Thomas Ashe wrote about a remarkable discovery made beneath Lexington in 1783. According to his account, a vast network of caverns was found, containing strange artifacts, a stone altar, and mummies. These weren't ordinary mummies though. They were described as unusually tall with red hair, leading local Native Americans to suggest they belonged to an ancient race that predated their own. A few years earlier, in 1792, General John Payne had made an equally startling find in Augusta, Kentucky. While building his house, Payne unearthed numerous skeletons of varying sizes. The most notable were exceptionally large, with one estimated to be 10 to 12 inches taller than David Kilgore, who was already described as a tall and very large man. Payne's account mentions finding over 110 skeletons in his cellar alone. Strangely, Augusta was visited by Harmon Blennerhassett on December 21, 1806. Blennerhassett, a lawyer and apparently member of the Illuminati, made this trip on the winter solstice while fleeing with about 50 of his fellow initiates, leaving his wife, his sons, and the rest of his guerrilla troops behind. But this is interesting because instead of making a direct exit, Blennerhassett risked making a mysterious side trip to Augusta, Kentucky, arriving on the day of the solstice. It's possible that Blennerhassett was interested in Kentucky's lost ancient civilization. Adding to Kentucky's mysteries, NASA reportedly identified what they call the Kentucky anomaly. This was described as a significant magnetic and gravity anomaly detected beneath Kentucky and Tennessee. The original report, which has since been removed from NASA's website, suggested the anomaly had its source in pre-Cambrian times, potentially explaining the area's long-standing reputation for strangeness. What's even more fascinating is that there's a book titled History of Lexington, published in 1872, and it discusses some of this weird stuff. It makes several claims about tunnels and caverns beneath the city. The author, G.W. Rank, described a gallery of tunnels somewhere beneath Lexington. The report detailed how in 1776, hunters from the frontier town of Boonesborough found rocks of peculiar workmanship, behind which was found a tunnel. The small opening inclined sharply into the rock and enlarged into a grand gallery about 4 feet wide and 7 feet high. After a few hundred feet, the gallery led to an even larger chamber that was 18 feet high, 100 feet wide, and 300 feet in length. Inside of this chamber were found an altar, idols, and about 2,000 human mummies. This discovery, if true, would be absolutely mind-blowing. Imagine just 3 years before the first permanent white settlement in Lexington, hunters stumbling upon an ancient underground city. The presence of mummies suggests a civilization far more advanced than the Native American tribes known to inhabit the area at that time. Rank goes on to describe how this underground chamber was disturbed and largely destroyed during the subsequent years of conflict between settlers and Native Americans. However, he claims that when it was revisited years later, fragments of human limbs could still be found among the dust and rubble. What's even more intriguing is that Rank wasn't alone in making such claims. The book mentions earlier accounts, including the one from 1806 by Thomas Ashe, who we just discussed. It is interesting to consider as in Etidorpa, the entrance to the inner earth is in Kentucky, so perhaps there is some truth to this idea. There are many who suggest there are deep underground cities today, with working farm systems, neighborhood homes, fast-speed train travel, designed for the elites in the case of a future catastrophe. While obviously there's no proof for these claims, you would have to think that if this was truly the case, it would be a highly guarded secret. Think the Dulce base or the Denver airport. which they even joke about this stuff strangely, but perhaps this is just the surface level to what's really going on. Personally, I think there is truth to this subject matter, from ancient underground spiritual advanced civilizations to modern government controlled underground cities like the city of Ember. They have the tech to do this. It's more so, do we trust that we're being told everything about the nature of our realm? Does the government keep secrets? Imagine that there are hundreds of cities that we don't even know about, secretly beneath the surface. Do they know about us? Are they simply for the elite, or perhaps these underground cities are experiments as well? There are countless accounts of people going missing in the forest and on mountain ranges. Perhaps one of the places they are going are literal underground cities, which a theme in many of these stories of Inner Earth is once you go there, you can never come back. Would you go to one of these Inner Earth cities if that was the case? Thanks for watching, and maybe one day we can make it to an Inner Earth city. But yeah guys, that's it for this video. Make sure you got notifications on, and tell your friends and family about us. All we can hope is that our minds may be unveiled.
Let go of everything you think to be true. Relax the mind and ask the question, do I truly understand what this reality is?